9. Tendahai. Tendahai was coming home from school, telling her friends about the gangster film she had been watching at her sister's house the night before when she heard someone call her name. She turned and saw the bow-legged timekeeper, Flossie, running after her. "You're wanted," said Flossie breathlessly. Her nickname, Body and Trailer, was not for nothing. She was a mound of fatty tissues. You couldn't have told she was very young if you hadn't looked at her face. "Who wants me?" "A man has been sent by your sister." "Oh." Tendahai started running back towards the school when Flossie added, "He's outside the head's office." Tendahai noticed the taxi first before she became aware of the passenger in the rear seat. She recognized him immediately. Despite his ugly features, she thought he looked a kind man. He opened the other door for her. But she hesitated like a 7-year-old asked to step into a dentist's room. Should she go in? Hadn't Sis Sibongile warned her about becoming too friendly with strangers? Should she trust this man? Hadn't she once watched an American movie about a friendly man who used to assault young girls of her age? But this man was different, she assured herself, staring into his friendly eyes. He looked like someone she knew but just couldn't locate in the corridors of her memory. "Come in, Tendahai," he said disarmingly, sensing her uncertainty. "Thank you," she said and slid in beside him. "The car smells of fish," thought Tendahai, grimacing. She surveyed the dashboard whose meters appeared dead. The man leaned forward to tell the driver to start the car. "Did you tell your sister that I had given you some money?" the man said, turning to Tendahai. "Not Sis Sibo, but Sis Julia. I told her." "You met her yesterday?" His eyes widened in surprise. "I spent the night there," she said with pride, as if spending a night at Julia's was an achievement. "Julia," he muttered and closed his eyes for a moment. Tendahai looked at him. The man was ugly. No doubt about it. He had the kind of face that would frighten any young girl, even in broad daylight, but Tendahai was not afraid of him. There was something about him which made him look harmless, she thought. Maybe it's the eyes, so sad and innocent. Then the man opened his eyes, she looked away. "I'm related to Julia," he said, softly. "Are you?" Tendahai asked doubtfully. She knew that Sibongile and Julia were her sisters, so how come this man was related only to Sis Julia? "Hasn't Julia ever mentioned something about me, eh?" It was then that she realized she didn't know his name. "Who are you?" "My name is Alphonse," he replied, his head rolling back as if he was enjoying the conversation with her. Alphonse? What an ugly name, she thought, realizing as if for the first time that he was a complete stranger to her, although he had given her the 5 kwacha the day before. "Where are we going?" she asked when she noticed that the car was not heading towards Kanjedza location. "To my house," he answered simply, as if he had taken it for granted she would know where they were going. To his house? That alarmed her. What was there at his house? "I thought we were going," she began, a measure of fright creeping into her voice. "God help me, Sis Sibo will be furious." "Do you want to go to Julia's house?" "Yes please. God help me." "Okay. After we've been to my house, eh?" There was a lump in her throat now. She was suddenly like a little child left to face the dentist alone. "Are you afraid of me?" She was very afraid now, just like the day she had fallen off a tree and had to be rushed to the hospital. She had thought they would amputate the limb. "I say you need not be," he said and tried to pat her on the knee. She jerked back instinctively, cursing herself for having been so trusting. Where were they going? Was he going to kill her and throw her body to the dogs? Sis Sibo had once told her about the slave traders who used to throw little girls' bodies to the hounds in the bush. I mustn't cry, she thought. I'm not a little girl anymore. Sis Julia will come to my rescue. She blinked back the tears rapidly as the taxi zigzagged up and down the roads as if deliberately trying to make her lose her sense of direction. She found herself recalling the film she had seen a few months before at Sis Julia's. Her elder sister had insisted that Tendahai should bring along several of her friends for the film was educational. It was about a friendly man of about 45 who went around the streets with a briefcase full of chocolate bars. In his soft voice, the man would approach a girl and offer her a chocolate bar, saying, "It's God's wish that we share with others what we have in abundance." Then next day he would come again and say that if anybody needed some more chocolates, she should accompany him to his shop, which was just down the street. Naturally, one or two girls would follow him and then he would strike. Tendahai shuddered. Had she been too trusting? Further up the road, the car slowed down and then pulled up outside a row of flats where several pot-bellied people were drinking beer and laughing at meaningless jokes. "Mind if I get a cigarette?" the driver said, and, without waiting for an answer, he got out of the car. Tendahai saw her chance. It was now or never. She unlocked the door softly. And when she was sure it was not going to give her a problem, she said, "I'd like to go to the lavatory, sir. If he says no, I'll dash for it." "Okay, dear. Hurry up then," the man said with a chuckle, his eyes full of warmth. Leaving her briefcase on the rear seat, she trotted to the flats and asked one of the Carlsberging people where the toilets were. "Behind there, my good woman." "Thank you." The moment she was behind the buildings, she broke into a run down a road. Never before had she run like that, running without looking back like a rat fleeing from a raging bushfire. A few meters down the road, she reached a bus stop where there were about 4 or 5 people and, oh, thank God, the next moment, she heard the sound of a bus. She turned and saw the bus slowing down. She could read that it wasn't going to Limber. Its placard read, "Blantyre Zomba." And behind the bus she thought she saw a car which was more or less like the taxi she had been in. Although the bus was not going to Limber, she decided not to take chances and risk falling into the hands of the friendly ugly man. So, she jumped aboard the moment the mobile block stopped, hoping that if the man in the taxi was still following her, she could remain on the bus until he gave up the chase. Whether it meant finding herself in Zomba or not, she was safer on the wrong bus than in the company of the stranger who wanted to take her to his house. A couple of minutes later, she sat up and cast quick glances behind the bus and noticed that there was no taxi following behind, just 2 Land Rovers and a minibus. Excited, she got up abruptly to make sure the taxi had indeed given up the chase. The man she had been sitting next to obviously didn't like her vacating the seat in that manner, as if he was generating a pungent smell from his armpits. He gave her a disdainful look as she made her way to the back of the bus. Tendahai looked out of the window and thank God, the taxi was nowhere in sight. The man must have given up. She stared out of the window, oblivious of the other passengers' puzzled glances at her. Then she drew away from it, found herself a seat next to a man who was holding a book upside down and yet appeared to be reading every line, for his lips moved silently as his eyes scanned the printed pages. The big question was now, how would she get off the bus? She had no money to pay the fare. They weren't far away from Limber at that time, so she could possibly walk to the nearest office, shop or something and ring her sisters to come and fetch her. But would the driver and his conductor accept her story that she had been running away from a stranger who wanted to take her to his home? Would they believe her? The conductor, who thought there was something fishy about her actions, made his way to her from where he had been standing near the door ogling one of the female passengers. "Where are you going?" he asked, balancing against one of the seats as the vehicle was negotiating a bend. I would like to drop here, sir. The bus is going to Zomba. You should know that." The conductor's remark sparked off a string of questions from the other passengers. "Somebody on the wrong bus?" a husky voice asked, suppressing a laugh. "Do we still have illiterates in this country?" someone else asked, theatrically surprised. "I bet if anybody is lost, it's got to be a member of the female species," grunted a bachelor in his early 50s. "Why a woman?" someone sitting next to a large female passenger wanted to know. "Women are always lost, man," came the answer, followed by hearty laughter from the predominantly male passengers. "Who's talking about women?" "He must be unmarried," the man sitting next to the woman said. "Childless is a better word," smirked the woman the man was sitting next to, and she was immediately rewarded with thank you glances from the few other female passengers. "Is this a bus or a drinking place?" The bald man, a hymn book in his lap, asked in a voice of an impatient school teacher. SHHH, some people are sleeping. In a bus? By this time everybody was talking at the top of their voices. Annoyed with the din, the driver rammed on the brakes, almost making the conductor lose his balance. Climbing from his seat, he stood on the protruding engine cover. His shirt sleeves rolled up, he said in a loud voice, "If any one of you has been emptying beer packets, he'd better jump out. I don't like noise when I'm driving. It gives me ulcers. By the empty crawl of my uncle, what's the noise about?" "Don't worry, I'll sort everything out," said the conductor. "What's the noise about, I'm asking?" "Since when have drivers become discipline officers?" demanded someone, his voice a strong whisper. "All bald drivers are like that," another man added in an undertone but loud enough for most of the passengers to hear, and burst out laughing. The driver became furious. "By the beard of my grandfather, what's the noise about? I'm not driving this bus until I know who's responsible for all this football match noise. Come on, I'm not joking." There was silence punctuated by a cough here, a snigger there. The man who was sitting next to Tendehai stood up and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Driver. My name is Nozo," hissed the driver in the manner of a security guard who gets introduced as a night watchman. "Yes, Your Honor, Chief Ngozo, sir. I know it's an impossible task to drive a bus." "Just say what's happening," demanded the driver, somewhat flattered with the words of graciousness which the man was bestowing on him. "Yes, our sheik, there's a passenger here who appears to have got on the wrong bus." "Who's that?" The man pointed to Tendehai, who was so used to classroom discipline that she stood up, her eyes watery, expecting to be given a headmaster's talking to. "And, girl, where are you going?" the driver asked. "Kanjedza." "What?" roared the driver suspiciously. Was the girl pulling his leg? "By the belching donkey of my aunt, are you serious? How did you get on this bus?" "I jumped on it." "How does one get on a bus?" "Silly man. Do you go to school?" "Yes, sir." "Do they teach you how to read?" "Yes, sir." "She doesn't like reading classes," someone remarked. The driver stared at her for a moment, shrugged his shoulders and decided to jump back onto his seat. "I'll drop you off at the next stop. And don't ever go jumping on wrong buses again." When they reached the next bus stop, which was about 10 kilometers from Limba, Tendehai got up to go out. "The fare," said the conductor who had been standing against a seat staring at pedestrians as the bus went past them. "I don't have the money, sir." And immediately there was verbal commotion again. If the girl was a schoolgirl, where was her school bag? What was she doing on the wrong bus without any money on her? These are the kids who believe that conductors are daft. "You think I can let you out without paying a tombola?" The driver, who was now visibly angry that the girl was trying to outsmart them, said he was fed up with these town youths who always jumped on and off public transport without paying the fare. It was time he taught them a lesson. He was driving straight to the nearest police station and would hand her over. Most of the passengers agreed with him that the youth of today needed a lot of disciplining. So a night in a police cell would make the girl think twice before trying to lead older people up a garden path. One had to respect those who had seen more rains. Tendehai tried to explain why she had jumped on the bus, but her story sounded so incredible that it annoyed even those passengers who had been feeling sorry for her so far. Who had ever heard of such a stupid attempt at kidnapping? Would a kidnapper stop outside a shop to buy cigarettes, leaving his hostage in the car? Would his accomplice allow the hostage to go and answer the call of nature? Absurd. Was she trying to say that the passengers were a collection of fools who would listen to any yarn and feel sorry for the speaker as long as she shed a tear or two? The bus stopped outside Molosa police post, which was about 15 kilometers from Limba. The driver, accompanied by the conductor and a curious elderly man, went into the small police building. When they came out some minutes later, they were accompanied by a police sergeant. "Come down, girl," the sergeant ordered, standing on the steps of the bus. Tendehai staggered forward, her knees knocking against each other. She had never been in trouble with the police before. "Where are you, Sis Julia? Where are you, Sis Sybil?" Please help. The bus left immediately, and she was suddenly alone with the towering figure of the sergeant, who looked at his watch, yawned and muttered, "Time for some of us to go." He turned to look at Tendehai, who was sitting in front of the tall desk whose top was faded as a result of people's elbows being planted there now and then. "How old are you?" "About 12, she croaked, shuddering at the thought of spending a night in police custody. The sergeant apparently did not believe she was that young. He pretended he hadn't heard what she had said. He stared at the ceiling aimlessly before asking, "Is that your school uniform?" "Yes, sir. Looks too small," he muttered, glancing at his watch again. "You know, woman, some of us have to go. I'll lock you up and we'll get your statement tomorrow." "Lock me up?" Tendehai sat up. "Sis Julia would." "Shut up. You're a rogue and vagabond. Got that? The likes of you are a shame to the country. So shut up." He would have had her locked up if a younger policeman hadn't come in to take over the shift. "Lock her up," said the elderly policeman in disgust after handing over the keys and some documents. Obviously, he couldn't stand rogues and vagabonds. "Of course," replied the younger man. Turning to Tendehai, the sergeant who had just come in asked her what had happened. And Tendehai, desperate not to spend the night in a cell away from home, started talking about how she had come to be on that bus without any money on her. For some reason, though shuddering at the thought of spending the night away from the comfort of her bed and the protection of Sis Sibyl, she didn't disclose Alphonse's name, and her description of the ugly man in the taxi was so vague it didn't make sense. She didn't want to drag in Alphonse, for there was some aroma of innocence around him, however ugly he was. It would be a pity to have him picked up by the police, she thought. There had to be an explanation as to why he had wanted to take her to his home, to give her some money perhaps. To give her some gift. There had to be an explanation. He deserved the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she shouldn't have run away from him. She was like a child when scolded by her favorite teacher. She was prepared to forget everything, to hide the punch behind her back. Puzzled, the policeman started taking down her statement. It didn't make sense to him, and he wondered whether there perhaps was anything wrong with the girl. Her statement was as muddled up as if it was coming from somebody who had been drugged. "Just a minute, miss," he said, exasperated. "Are you sure you had never met the man before?" "Never. How come you said yes when he opened the door for you?" The questions were conjuring up a series of other questions merely because the story was too thin, thought the policeman who had graduated from the police college not long ago. And didn't the trainers say patience always paid off? "He looked like someone I know, sir." "So this man just said come in and you climbed into the car?" "Yes, sir." "Just like that?" "Yes, sir." "While in the car, did he, try to touch you?" "No, sir." "Where were you going?" "I don't know." "Why didn't you protest to the driver?" "Really, I'm fed up. This beats interrogation," he thought in exasperation. "I forgot." "You forgot what?" "Blast it, girl, talk sense. To protest to the driver. How old are you again?" "An imbecile this one. I'll be 12 in a few months." "Girl, you have the mind of a 4-year-old. Where were you born?" "Zimbabwe." "That's it," sighed the policeman, bored stiff. "You can never get the truth out of these Zimbabwean-born girls. I know what they are like. I went to school with some of them myself. They lie without changing either the tone of their voice or the expression on their face. Bet this girl was out with a sugar daddy and things got sour. Come to think of it, she doesn't look 12, she may be 16, for all I know." "Excuse me, sir, can I ring my sis Julia?" Tendehai asked, as if recovering from the pressure of the questions. "She'll come to fetch me." The sergeant almost said no, but he was now bent on getting rid of the girl who appeared to be a psychological case. "Where's she?" "In Blantyre." "And she'll come here?" The young sergeant was thinking about what would happen if his colleagues found the girl there. They wouldn't swallow her cock and bull story. They would, suspicious minds, think there was something between the girl and him. He was silent for a moment before speaking. What's the number? She told him as he lifted the receiver. He got through and handed the phone to her. Sis. That you, Tendehai? Julia's voice was full of excitement. Where are you? Sibongile is running up and down looking for you. She looked up at the policeman who was getting more and more convinced there was something wrong with the girl upstairs. Molosa Police Post, he said. Molosa Police. Tendehai repeated. What happened? Tell me. Molosa. How on earth did you get there, Tendehai? If Julia had suppressed her emotions, she would have realized Tendehai had said Molosa, not Molosa. These were two different places. Sis, come and pick me up. I'll explain. But, good God, Molosa. Wait there. I'll come with Sibo. Wait there. Fine. You wait there. Yes, sis. Don't go away. You wait there. I won't go away, sis. I'm with the police. Under arrest? No. Tendehai could picture her elder sister clutching the phone as if seeking support, as if the moment she let it go she would be letting go her entire life. Good God. You wait there. We'll be there. You wait. All right, Tendehai. Yes, sis. Good girl. You wait there. And the phone went dead. Outside the Molosa Police Post, which was within a brick's throw from the ML, cars sped by, carrying passengers who kept their problems to themselves. Some were worried about their husbands or their wives, their jobs, their children, but none was worried about the little girl called Tendehai who was biting her nails impatiently in the charge office. Life still goes on no matter what problems people have.